The first beam of morning light pierced the gaps in the curtains, casting a golden rectangle that stretched from the wall to the makeshift mattress in the corner of the laboratory. Its gentle warmth seeped through the thin blanket, pulling Dr. James from a fragmented, restless sleep. His eyes opened slowly, fixing on the geometric pattern of light that sliced the room into two distinct halves, shadow and brilliance. For a moment, he remained still, anchored to the cold floor by the sheer weight of exhaustion. The memory of the previous night washed over him in waves. 4 uninterrupted hours hunched over calculations, adjusting parameters, checking connections. 4 hours sustained by bitter coffee and stubborn hope. With a lethargic motion, he reached for his cell phone. The screen lit up. 8:47. He rubbed his eyes with the back of his hand, trying to clear the fog of fatigue. The laboratory around him told the silent story of months of obsessive work. Rows of glass jars crowded the benches, each filled with solutions of varying hues: amber, translucent blue, pale green. Suspended in the center of each container like a small organic island, a rat grain floated. Delicate electrodes emerged from the hermetically sealed lids, connecting to a network of LEDs that were meant to blink like constellations of hope. But the laboratory remained plunged in silence. No LED blinked. No sign of artificial life echoed through the carefully calibrated connections. James rose slowly to his feet, his knees protesting the hard floor where he had once again slept. He moved between the benches, observing each jar with the meticulousness of an archaeologist examining lost artifacts. His hands trembled slightly. He didn't know whether from fatigue or the dawning perception of failure.
"Seems we didn't manage it this time,"
he murmured to himself, his rough voice cutting the morning silence. Quick footsteps echoed from the corridor outside, followed by the metallic jangle of keys. The door opened behind him, bringing a gust of hallway air and the familiar presence of his assistant. Dr. James turned slowly, meeting Diogo's gaze. The young PhD student in neurosurgery stood frozen at the threshold, his impeccable white lab coat a stark contrast to the controlled chaos of the laboratory. There was something in his posture, a hesitation, a weight in his downcast eyes.
"Sir, Dr. Isaac wants to speak with you. Urgently,"
said Diogo, all too familiar with the look of exhaustion on his supervisor's face, the deep wrinkles around the eyes, the slightly stooped posture, the way James rubbed the back of his neck when things went wrong.
"It's a bit early for a board meeting. Tell him not to bother me. I'll be there in half an hour. I just need to tidy up and lock the room."
"This isn't about the board, my friend."
The voice boomed from the corridor before its owner appeared. Dr. Isake, the university director, materialized in the doorway, brushing past Diogo with the buoyant energy of a man bearing good news. His smile was unrestrained.
"I have excellent news about the experiment you've been assisting us with."
James studied the director for a moment, searching for signs of a bluff or academic hyperbole. He had known Isake long enough to know he didn't make morning visits for trivial matters. He took a deep breath, feeling the cold air of the laboratory fill his lungs.
"All right,"
said James, planting his hands on his hips.
"Diogo, could you empty all the jars, clean up, and organize everything so we can restart the experiments tomorrow, please?"
Before Diogo could respond, Isake rested a hand on Diogo's shoulder.
"He needs to come with us, James. He was a tremendous help last night. You weren't the only one who slept in the lab today."
"Then just close the curtain and lock the room,"
James replied, already walking into the corridor without a backward glance.
"Yes, Dr. James. As soon as I lock up, I'll head straight to Dr. Isaac's office."
James, ever the pragmatist. "See you in my office, Diogo."
The two researchers walked down the corridor of the Federal University of the Jequitinhonha and Mucuri Valleys, their footsteps echoing against concrete walls that had witnessed decades of academic discoveries and frustrations. The campus in Theophino Otoni was still silent that morning, with only the distant hum of the ventilation system breaking the quiet.
You have no idea how productive the last few weeks have been. After you came on board to help dose the liquid agent, our results skyrocketed. Today, we reached astronomical levels.
It was nothing. I just lent a hand with the new compound. Have you already submitted the documentation to name the new element?
Yes, it's all in motion. The sample will be analyzed by over 200 researchers worldwide. Prepare yourself, because in a few weeks, our names will be plastered across the biggest scientific journals.
James didn't look at Isake once. He seemed indifferent to what Isake was saying, wanting only for the conversation to be over.
And what name did your team decide on for the new element?
My entire team agreed. The name should honor a great scientist from history, someone whose name will be etched into human history forever.
Who did you have in mind? A contemporary scientist or an ancient philosopher?
We thought of naming it Jamesanium.
James stopped dead in the middle of the corridor, as if he had hit an invisible wall. His eyes widened, locked on Isake's. The blood seemed to drain from his face, leaving him pale under the fluorescent lights. The discomfort was palpable. A mixture of shock and recognition was stamped on his tense features. For a moment, the quiet university corridor amplified the weight of that name, which echoed in his mind like an unwanted reverberation.
I know the name is a bit odd, but it's the best we could do. Can you at least pretend to like it?
I see no reason to put my name on the new element. I only assisted with an internal university project. The credit should go to someone on the team.
What you call a little help saved us a tremendous amount of time. If you hadn't embraced the cause, we would never have achieved such promising results. You performed the entire analysis of the chemical reactions and combinations of the new compound. You were the first to see there was something unusual about the sample.
James ran a hand through his hair, his fingers tangling in his disheveled hair in a nervous, familiar gesture. The name still echoed in his ears like a distant siren. But when his eyes met Isake's, a strange contradiction settled in his chest. There was almost a childishness in Isake's gleam, a genuine excitement that radiated from his dilated pupils.
I'll consider it good news after 20 years of work,
he said, pointing a finger at Isake's chest.
Come now, don't be so pessimistic. You've worked on many successful projects, work that to this day yields scientific papers and advances global knowledge in health and technology. Besides, thanks to you, Jamesanium can be studied using your patent for separating those atoms. Yes, I made sure to patent it in your name.
I don't understand. I only have one project. The rest was just helping out.
Just helping out? I can already imagine what will happen when your own project bears fruit. If your assistance alone makes projects succeed worldwide, imagine what will happen when your life's work takes off.
Judging by the results I saw today, I'll probably die without ever seeing my success.
He sighed heavily, a sound more like a snort of irritation. For a moment, the corridor fell silent, save for the distant hum of the air conditioning.
Let's go. I want to see the results of your project soon.
Our project, James. This is our project.
Diogo came running down the director's corridor, arriving just moments before Isake opened the door. When James entered the room, he was met with an unexpected scene. All the university professors were there, crammed into an office that normally held only a few people. The space was packed, familiar faces filling every available spot. When they saw him, everyone stood up in unison. The sound of scraping chairs echoed through the room, followed by a round of applause that quickly swelled in intensity. Amid this improvised celebration, James noticed a white cardboard sign hung by a string between two walls. In large, colorful letters, it read, Jamesanium, swaying gently in the stirred air.
I know the compound's name was supposed to be a surprise, but the real surprise is that the name was approved and the compound is exclusively for research use here at the university.
Isake placed a hand on James' shoulder and shouted, raising his right hand with his index finger pointed at the ceiling.
All thanks to you, James. Today we can begin our most advanced research on the element.
James looked into Isake's eyes.
I don't know what to say.
You deserve it, my friend.
But what about the results of the research project I helped with?
We managed to completely extract the atoms from the fluid compound generated from our sample. This means we can now work with the new compound using a neutral pH aqueous solution with no risks. Furthermore, we prove the compound shows no level of toxicity to humans.
After I filed my patent, I imagine you managed to secure exclusivity of the sample?
Don't be a spoil sport and enjoy our little party. Come, we want you to give a speech to everyone involved. Today is a historic day.
James was nudged by Diogo to the front of the room, all eyes fixed on the doctor, waiting for his words. He began to blush and tried to avert his gaze.
Well, good morning, everyone. I'm very happy with your achievement.
He paused, looking at the floor.
I'm not very good at these things, you know. I'm not one for speeches.
He looked around, uncomfortable, and continued.
But, well, what you've accomplished here, this will, in fact, change science. It will change a lot of things.
He made a short pause, as if searching for the right words.
From today on, this will be remembered. And you are, let's say, the first paragraph of this new chapter.
He gave one last, uncomfortable glance at his colleagues and started to move away.
That's it. Congratulations.
James stepped back, moving to the corner near the door. Silence settled for a few seconds until muffled laughter began to ripple through the crowd of professors.
Today is truly a momentous day. We all know the potential of this project, even though we are still beginning to understand the compound and have only just managed to extract all the atoms in an aqueous solution. We have bigger goals ahead.
Among the professors, someone muttered under his breath.
I'm not sure a new atom will cause such a change in our science.
James seemed to ignore it, but was visibly bothered.
Where are the snacks?
Said Diogo right after hearing the murmur. Everyone turned and headed towards the table with the food and drinks, but James opened the door and slipped out stealthily. Isake saw his friend leave but decided to stay with the other professors. James hurried back through the corridors toward his laboratory. He no longer seemed concerned with the director's office or bothered by his colleagues' murmuring. His sole focus was on getting to his lab, cleaning up, and redoing all his experiments with the rat brains. For over 20 years, James had dedicated himself to the study of brain preservation, driven by the goal of treating age-related cerebral diseases. For him, the answer lay in two variables: slowing the death of brain cells and enabling their accelerated reproduction. Even though inducing cell reproduction was a distant prospect, he believed this solution would solve other brain-related problems and initiate a process of accelerated human evolution. Few things rattled James's resolve, but what terrified him most was the idea of a person dying only in their mind. The body still wandered the earth, but consciousness had been extinguished. He had seen this happen to members of his own family. Gradually, he had watched his mother lose her memory, forget who her children were, lose her past, and eventually, even her own name. He had seen her become an empty shell with her memories fading each day. No recollections, no affection, no knowledge, no life. His thoughts dragged through these memories, through the stories of relatives who had passed on but left their bodies wandering through houses as if they were still present. James's mind grew heavy. A pain that formed in his chest rose into his throat and lodged in his mouth. When he became aware of his surroundings, he was standing in front of his laboratory door. He didn't know how long he had been there, but he noticed some students watching him, exchanging furtive glances and whispering among themselves. Without further delay, he quickly opened the door and hurried inside, closing it immediately.
I need to clean this lab and start all over. At least that way I keep my mind fixed on my studies and don't get lost in my memories.
The curtains were closed and the whole room was dark. He could barely see inside except for one corner near the whiteboard, where a reflection illuminated the edge of the board, a faint glow, but enough to navigate by its small reddish light. James's mind was flooded with thoughts. A cold turmoil churned in his belly. Slowly, he began to walk toward the small reddish glow. He couldn't breathe. With each step, he felt his heart pound harder.
I don't believe it. After thousands of attempts, one of my experiments worked.
James knelt before the jar and began to touch it with the tip of his index finger. His heart palpitated, a strong pressure in his chest making it hard to breathe. The words barely left his mouth.
Hello, my little friend. Know that I never wanted you or any of your kind to end up this way, but I needed to do it. Feel honored to be the first to prove life after supposed death.
James noticed the small LED begin to pulse. Slowly, the light varied in intensity until it stabilized again.
It seems you're thanking me. You're welcome, my little friend.
He stood up quickly and grabbed a small piece of paper with the notes for that sample. Right at the top, it said, Sample number 30. Experiment from 10/11/2043. That paper wasn't written by him. The notation was made by his assistant, Diogo.
I need to bring him here now.
Hurriedly, he ran out the laboratory door. He didn't even lock it, just slammed it shut. All the students in the corridor were startled by the noise and the sudden appearance of Dr. James. They quickly pressed themselves against the wall, making space for him. The students could hear James whispering Diogo's name over and over. When he reached the director's office, everyone was seated, and one of the professors was clearing some containers from the food table.
Where is Diego?
He probably went to the bathroom. Here, my friend, I saved some of the snacks for you.
Izaki only heard the door slam. His hand was still extended, holding a container with some coxinhas wrapped in a napkin. James ran to the bathrooms. There, he found Diogo washing his hands.
I need you urgently in my laboratory.
can I finish washing my hands?
Wash them later. Come with me. There's something much more important than that little teacher party waiting for you.
James dragged Diogo through the corridors in front of some professors who began to laugh discreetly at the scene. A scene that was all too common for James's assistant, as the researcher was often seized by an investigative fervor that required everyone involved to be in his room to continue the work.
Doctor, relax. I was already heading to the room to clean everything and restart the studies. You don't need to push me like that in front of everyone.
What do you want? Clean the room? No, you are not to touch anything in that room. Come on, you need to help me with something.
What? We're not restarting the project?
Shut up and come on, you need to see this. James let go of Diogo and continued alone down the corridors. Diogo straightened his clothes and quickly followed his tutor. Upon entering the office, Diogo found the room completely dark.
Come on, close this door.
Diogo quickly pulled the door shut and immediately noticed one of the LEDs was on.
So it worked. That's great, Dr. James.
Come here. You need to see the data. You're the one who dosed this fluid so the rat brain would survive.
Me? I can't believe the result came from my hands. Finally, I'm gonna finish my doctorate.
You're worried about being a doctor? Diogo, what we have here is much bigger than that. I need you to note and describe all these variations in the LED, because I believe they represent the rat's brain signals. Also, I need the full report on the fluid contained in this jar.
Right. First, I'll make my notes and research the work done by Nicholas to interpret this collected data.
You'll take too long with that research. The work done since the 80s is quite extensive. Before that, take a sample from this jar and put it on my desk. I'll clean this whole place to start a more detailed study with samples of the fluid.
Diogo hurriedly ran to the cabinets, grabbed a syringe, and inserted the needle through the lid, collecting a sample of the aqueous solution. He carried the sample very carefully and placed it on James's desk. After doing as his superior requested, Diogo got his notebook and placed it on the table in front of the jar. He spent the entire day analyzing the blinking LED and researching brain signal analysis. Jane spent the time collecting all the jars, removing the labels, discarding all the material, and storing the electrodes in the cabinets. Before he knew it, night was falling, but he didn't feel tired. He was euphoric about the results and felt the need to continue working through the night. James and Diogo stayed up all night, taking notes and analyzing the data they collected. The room was taken over by the light of the next day, and there they were, hunched over toward the table with many papers scattered on the floor. Someone knocked on the door.
James, are you in there?
James awoke and saw all that mess. His head was throbbing, but he knew they had promising results after analyzing the sample.
Yes, come in.
The door is locked. I came to clean the laboratory.
James got up and opened the door, and some undergraduate research students were waiting to prepare the lab.
But this laboratory is mine. I handle the cleaning and preparation myself.
It was Dr. Izamok's order. We just have to clean the place.
Wait here.
James closed the door and went to Diogo.
Diogo, wake up! I need you to stop the students from coming in here. I need to solve a problem. I'll be back in a few minutes.
But what problem, sir?
James turned his back and left through the door, passing the students. They began to enter the laboratory. Diogo jumped from his chair and ran to the students, asking them to stay outside until James returned. The door to Izaki's office opened, and James walked through it.
James, what are you doing here so early?
I'm here to stop you from taking my laboratory.
You were there? I asked the students to go there and prepare the place, as today we begin studies with James Ania.
Sorry, my old friend, but I did not authorize the use of my laboratory.
James, I'm just trying to get the team closer to you, especially now that we are starting studies with the new chemical element.
These professors don't take me seriously. You know that very well. Besides, use another laboratory. I have my own research in progress, and I can't set it aside now.
For over 20 years, you've been working on this with no results. How about we start studies with James Ania in your laboratory? That way, you'll be much closer to this research that bears your name.
Believe me, Isaac, I always had results. It doesn't mean I failed in the experiments that had no results. In fact, failure is a good result, and that's how I develop much more. James fixed his gaze on Izaki's eyes for long seconds, unable to utter a word. His breathing was out of control, his chest rising and falling rapidly as if the air wasn't reaching his lungs. His hands trembled slightly at his sides.
All right, I ask you to calm down, James. I'm sorry for giving that order without consulting you. I'll ask the students to set up another laboratory to start the studies.
I'd like to take the opportunity to ask you a favor. Give me a sample of the new chemical element. I need it to continue working.
But James, what we have is very little, and we don't even have authorization to use the entire sample for experiments. What do you want to do with it? You know, you have to be very careful not to lose the sample.
Come now, Isaac. Who created and then did the work and extraction of the compounds from our sample? I deserved a bit of it, and you can be sure not a single milligram of the new compound will be lost.
I'm sorry to make your request difficult, but you'll need to sign a liability form. I need to issue a report with all the work to be developed with this compound. You also need to write a summary of what you're developing. You don't need to say much, just say the goal is to cure brain diseases or something like that.
James stared at Izaki for a few seconds. His expression seemed irritated, but he quickly opened a false smile and replied, "Thank you." James left the room and pulled the door, which slammed shut. Izaki stared at the room, speechless. As he hurried through the university corridors, James muttered to himself, visibly irritated. How could he order my laboratory to be taken? Before he even arrived here, I was already in that laboratory. Before he became director, I was already working on this project. I, in good faith, gave my vote before everyone for him to become director, and this is how he treats me? Isaac is falling short. Days and nights passed. After obtaining a few grams of the new element, James and Diogo continued working hard in the laboratory. The small mattress was dirty and smelly, as James hadn't showered in days, nor had he even left the laboratory. For weeks, the only person he saw was his assistant.
Dr. James, we've been working on this research for weeks, and I see all your effort in verifying the dosage of the new element to replicate the fluid that feeds our first cultivated live brain. But I believe you need to go home, take a shower, and rest for at least this weekend. I'll clean the office myself and continue monitoring the signals emitted by the only live rat brain we have.
Don't talk nonsense, Diogo. I don't need to go home. I just need to figure out how this sample from the successful jar has a new chemical compound and how only it works. I've tried to make the fluid in many different ways with various dosages, and to this day, no other experiment has worked.
Sorry, doctor, but I believe this is a problem that demands more from the mind than from experiments. Perhaps if you rest and unload from this turbulence of thoughts and stress, your brain will manage to achieve a better result.
I don't need rest. I need results.
James slammed the desk with great force. The glow of the red LED began to decrease in intensity and went out. Diogo bent down and brought his eyes close to the jar with the brain.
Doctor, it seems our only sample has died.
James sat in the chair in front of the desk and put both hands over his face. The room fell silent for a few minutes until James got up, grabbed his lab coat, and left the laboratory. Diogo was left bewildered and followed him.
Diogo, you're right. You don't need to follow me. I'll be back next week. Lock my office and don't enter it again until Monday. I don't want anything to happen there, and I don't want anyone going in. Please inform me, Socks.
But sir, I need to finish my thesis with the research data.
And do it this weekend. Take everything you need from the laboratory to your office. Leave the jar alone. I'll deal with it later.
Diogo just stopped following him and returned to the laboratory.
Want to dive deeper into incredible stories? Check out author Thiago Saza's books, available on Amazon Kindle. Beyond these philosophical reflections, you'll find action-packed adventures, gripping mysteries, and extraordinary tales. If you enjoyed this philosophical journey and were captivated by these revelations, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and share this video with someone who's also searching for answers about life and our place in the universe.